right here in my home city of Sheffield. We've got a fishery that I very rarely visit. That's purely because most of the competitions I compete in are spread all over the UK, and they're mainly feeder orientated competitions. So it's mid-January, it's very, very cold. There was a heavy frost last night, so I decided to take the opportunity to travel to this wonderful fishery. It's a fishery that's been developed and created by Alex Mitchell, who's a former Barnsley Black. I've known him for several years, and he's created an incredible complex here where there are literally ponds everywhere you look. It was really, really cold last night. There aren't many spots that are available on the complex for fishing just due to the heavy ice. But I've managed to find a spot. I'm here on permanent peg 11 on Lily Pond. The lake is very, very coloured. It's very, very cold. And I've just spoken to two anglers that have been here for a couple of hours now, and they have said that it's actually freezing up while they're fishing. It's currently -2. So I'm going to be fishing for bites, but I've got a couple of little things that I'm going to be trying. I think it's going to be an interesting session. Now, whilst I was actually driving here this morning, I was thinking about how I might approach this venue. I didn't know what lake I was going to be on, but now I've actually seen the lake, I'm going to change my tactics slightly. I didn't realise that it was going to be quite as coloured as what it is, and I'd originally only planned on fishing with maggots and just fishing for bites, with it being such a sharp and heavy frost. So because it's so coloured, I'm actually going to introduce some ground bait, and that's my idea behind that, is basically to give some scent, some flavour into the water, where hopefully it's going to increase the chances of some fish finding the bait in this very coloured water. So the mix I'm going to use is one that's going to be quite strong in flavour, in taste, in smell, okay, because that's the whole idea of it. I'm sticking with the fish meal mix, so I'm going to be using some Ringer's Dark, alright, that a lot of you have seen me use. I'm not going to mix much because I'm going to be fishing a couple of different ways today. So I'm going to mix this 50-50, okay, so that's the Ringer's Dark, and then I'm going to mix that with the betaine green, the Dynamite one. It's really, really sweet, okay, and that's the idea, to get some flavour and some smell into the water. Like I said, I'm not going to mix too much because I'm going to be waiting for bites. I'm going to be really patient, but I am going to be fishing slightly different in a different area of the swim. So there we go, that's mixed up. It's a nice dark green colour, it's not really dark. Just get some water in there. I can really smell this, it's really strong smell wise, and that's the whole idea of it. That's the whole reason why I'm mixing ground bait. I haven't fished this lake for years. I'm assuming there are also some skimmers and bream in here, but I'm assuming there's plenty of silverfish as well. But today is really all about getting bites initially. So it's a really nice fluffy mix, that's lovely that. I'm going to put it through a sieve again. I'll probably have to add a little bit more water to that. I can overwet this mix if I need to. So that should give us a great start. Well, as you'd probably expect, it's going to be a really simple approach today, but I'm going to cover my options. So I'm going to be fishing one line with a ground bait feeder, just a nice little 4-hole side-weighted cage feeder, 20 gram. And I'm going to kick off with this. I'm going to kick off with that in the middle, slightly to my left, so in line with that tree on the other bank, or that bush. I'm going to fish on that line. I can't fish that line at the moment because a big sheet of ice is just moving through the peg, but that'll be out of the way in a few minutes. So I'm going to fish with a ground bait feeder there in the middle. That's obviously with this mix we just mixed. I've got some live pinkies, some nice fluorescent pinkies, and I've got some lovely fresh maggots here, which are from the on-site tackle shop, which is right here at the fishery. So they're really nice and fresh, and that's all I'm going to be introducing. So I'm going to kick off with the cage feeder, nice and patient. But while I'm fishing that line, I'm going to also be loose feeding maggots as well, shorter, it's about 15 metres, but slightly to my right. And I know they'll catch lots of fish on here with the pole, and a lot of that revolves around loose feeding maggots, certainly this time of year. So that's going to cover our bases. So I'm going to kick off with the ground bait feeder in the middle, and then I'm going to slowly build up this line with loose fed maggots over the course of the first hour, where hopefully we can drop a little bomb on there and we can virtually target anything that swims. A brief rundown of the setup and the gear I'm going to be using. I'm using the commercial, the 11-foot feeder, okay, 3.3 metre, 3000 reel, and I've got 6-pound Horizon mono on there. It is clipped up, and that's clipped up to the fishing right in the middle. It's a free running rig I'm going to be using. No feed link or anything like that today, just a snap leak swivel. I've got the 20g cage feeder there, and that's just stopped with a rubber stopper. I've got a short piece of line there, and I'm going to actually kick off with the lightest of our barbless hooks, which is a hook that I haven't really used in feeder fishing much, and that's why I'm using it today, just to familiarise myself with it. And this is the MXC5 that I know a lot of the pole lads use, certainly in winter with maggots. It's a really fine hook, size 16. And we're just going to see if we can get a few bites, and that hook length initially is just 25 centimetres. So what I'm going to kick off with is two very visual, bright fluorescent pinkies. It's a size 16 hooks, this barbless one obviously. There we go, to comply with fishery rules. Just two really nice bright pinkies, they should hopefully stand out. And then we're just going to kick off, I'm going to kick off feeding something. I'll say 6 maggots. And about the same again of pinkies. It's not very deep here, I think it's only about 4 or 5 foot, so I don't need to pack it in too tight. And I'm going to be fishing for that tree, for that bush. I think there's a little bit of ice there, but I think we might just get in before it comes across. There we go, get that tip down. No wind today. There's a bit of a breeze, but that's helping to move some of these sheets of ice. That's it. I think that line is just on a bit of ice there, but I think that's going to go. It's only thin ice that. Yeah, it's gone through it okay now, so I can sink the line. And that's it. I'm just going to be really nice and patient to start with, just to get a feel for if there's anything there. The only other anglers on this lake today are specimen anglers. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 other anglers on this lake, and they're all specimen fishing, so that doesn't really give me a great idea of whether there are any silverfish feeding or anything. But I've got to openly admit, I think I've seen a couple of fish showing, only small fish, in different areas that are clear of ice. So that's a little bit encouraging. So I'm just going to be nice and patient with this line, and then I'm going to be loose feeding maggots to the right. Not too many, obviously I can feed it quite often, and I'm just going to be feeding about 12 to 15 metres on the edge of that shadow, just in line with that second tree stump. And I'll just gradually build this line up over the next hour or so. Well, I've been fishing for an hour now on that one line with the ground bait feeder, and I've had a couple of little indications. I think they were line bites, just really slow, but I have had 2 quick bites as soon as the feeder's hit the bottom. I missed both bites, and the bait wasn't touched, but they were definitely bites. I think that's definitely suggesting that there are some hide kicking about, or small roach, fish that are up in the water, which would mean that this approach isn't right, but I'm going to stick with it for a little bit longer. Never know what it might produce. I'm still loose feeding maggots to my right. I've spoken to Alex, the fishery owner, and basically if they were going to fish on here, this is exactly how they'd fish it. They'd fish it with a long pole, loose feeding maggots. So that's why I've kind of fed that line the way that I'm feeding it. I haven't been on it yet, but I fully expect to get some bites on that. I didn't realise there are actually 7 lakes here. 7 different lakes, I had no idea, and there are loads of people fishing here today. You know, it's really popular. And the reason why it's so coloured on this lake here is because this is where the main stream comes through. So the 3 lakes that are in line, this one, the next one down, and the one below that, this is why it's so coloured, because there's been so much rain lately, we've had snow as well, and that's why these 3 lakes are all so coloured like they are. So I've kind of caught it on the wrong day, to be fair, but there's been that much water throughout this area that, I mean, the River Don's still flooded as well at the moment. However, the ponds on the edges of this main bit, so the ones that are up the hillside, are virtually clear. They look much more fishable. But I'm going to stick with it. I'm sure we're going to get a few bites on that loose fed maggot line. Just seen a fish rise there. Exactly the same line that I'm loose feeding maggots on. That slightly to the left, obviously, but it can only be a good sign. Just thought I had a tiny indication on this as well, but I don't know if it was a line, a really slow indication. Just got single maggot on now. Didn't get anything with the pinkies. I've tried double white maggot. What I'll do is when I come off this line to try the loose fed maggot line, I am gonna top this line up. I'm gonna set it up, put some feeding on it and leave it, because then when we're trying the maggot line, this line's obviously going to get a rest, so we might find that if we go back to it, we might nick 1 or 2 fish after that rest. Well, it's not getting any warmer. I haven't had a sign on that. Just tried a bomb, as you know. White maggot, red maggot and pinkies as well, not a single sign. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look on that loose fed maggot line now. But I am going to set this line up. I'm confident we might catch a fish on this, or a couple of fish. So I'm just going to set it up. So I'll just put the feeder back on. I'm just going to top it up with some bait. Just set it up so that if we do have to return to it, then there is some bait gone in on it, and you know, there's a chance that there might be 1 or 2 fish settled on it. I'm not going to squeeze this in too tight, because I'm going to empty it straight away. I'm just going to put just the 1 feeder full in, but there's a good 10 and 12 maggots in there. I'll just give that a few seconds just to make sure that water gets to the ground bait, and then I'll empty it. So all I'm going to do now is just clip that little bomb back on. It's only a 1/8 bomb. That's all I need for casting where we're going to be casting. I'm going to kick off with single maggot. It's just a little bomb, as you can see. Same rig, everything. In fact, no, I'm going to leave 2 on. I've still got 2 on there, so I'm going to leave 2 on, because they will stand out against the loose feed that I've been putting in, because I've fed this quite positive. So let's see if there's anything there waiting for us. There we go. I'm sure they'll let us know if there's any there. Been feeding it for an hour and a half now. To be honest, in winter sometimes you might leave it longer than that. Just depends on the scenario. So this is the first look on it. I haven't seen any fish move on that at all. I've seen 1 or 2 fish moving around the lake. I'm suspecting that they're eyed. I don't know if there's any F1s in this lake. I don't think there are. I'm just going to get out a few minutes. If I don't get anything, when I come back in, I'll just put single maggot on, and I'll just try permutations of different baits on this line. Well, I've just switched to a longer hook length. I've had 1 or 2 little indications, which has been enough to keep me going. But then obviously when that happens, you've got to turn them into fish. Let's have a look what this one is. I'm expecting it might be an eyed or something, but let's have a look. Yeah, it is, it's an eyed. A little bit better than what I thought when I first hooked it. Just hooked in the top lip. It's freezing cold, as you can imagine. There's still half of the lake, it's still frozen, but it's really cold. But there we go. It was a positive bite though that time. Nice chunky fish. Loose feeding definitely feels better today. In these conditions, certainly for these fish, you know, if these fish had been eyed, or if these fish had been skimmers or bream, then obviously it's a different ball game. But let's just pop him back. Well, that's good anyway. That's avoided the blank. But I really feel as though it's going to get stronger on that line. The more I feed it, the more I build it up. Generally, a line like this, I would have liked to have fed it for a good, 2 hours or so before I even went on it. But I went on it a bit sooner than that today. Obviously this is not a match, so I just wanted to see if there was anything there. Double maggot, double white maggot. And like I say, I've just put that's the first cast on a longer hook length. So that's a 50cm hook length. So that's set 50 centimeters. And then there's another length of line there. So we're looking at it, it's almost 60cm hook length now. Which is much longer than I would normally have fishing like this in winter. However, if we are looking at eyed and fish that are up in the water, then that longer hook length can obviously give you more chance of catching a fish as it's falling through the water. And that might be the case. I've seen 2 or 3 fish topping. I'm guessing they're eyed, not big fish, at different spots around the pond. So there's definitely 1 or 2 fish moving about. Really positive bite, that one. Fantastic. in little indications sometimes, and then, you know, you can go 3 casts without anything. I strongly suspect they're up and down in the water, but I can't find a rhythm at the minute or a best way of feeding. This feels a little bit of a better fish, this one. Double white maggot again. Oh, beautiful fish, look at that. Is that a roach or a hybrid? How about that? Well, look at that. A fantastic silverfish, that. Roach, hybrid, definitely not an hide. That's a beautiful fish. Very cold, very silver. Probably tell that I've still got my 3 hoods up. It's very, very cold now, but what a beautiful fish. I think that's definitely the line to be on. It's just kind of figuring out now the best way of feeding it. But I'm going to stick with it. I've had a quick cast on that feeder line again and not had a sign. Off we go, mate. So I think this is definitely the way to go, loose feeding. So all I need to do now is just try and find a better way of feeding it. You know, whether I need to feed it first, then cast over it, or if there is a pattern, there might not, you know, there might not be a pattern, but as a match angler, we want to find out the best way of doing it, don't we? I've stepped up to a slightly different hook now because I'm fishing double maggot. I'm fishing with an MXC1 size 16, so it's slightly bigger, slightly thicker gauge. I haven't really done it for the thicker gauge, I've done it for the size of hook, and that's because these are lovely fresh maggots that I've got from the tackle shop here, so they are quite large, and that other hook looked a little bit small for double maggot. I'm just flicking that bomb just past the feed and then just drawing it back over that area where we've fed, or where we're loose feeding. Just picked the catapult up and round it went. How many times has that happened? This feels a scrappy fish, this one. I'm just experimenting with my feeding at the minute. I've just slowed down. Well, I'm feeding more often now, but less feed, if that makes sense. So I'm almost feeding as though we were fishing shallow. Looks like a little carp. Let's have a look. Little stocky F1. It is. I could tell that was a different fish. Look at that beauty. There we go. Fantastic. Look at him. Fin perfect. Lovely. Well, that was the slowest bite that I've had all day. Gone a little bit quiet. I've just kept that feed going, and I've kept varying the feed, to be honest, cutting back, feeding more often. I haven't really spotted a pattern. I've just put 3 lots in one go and cast in over the top. I don't know what this is, but it feels like a bream. Big-eyed. I think it's a... I'm not quite sure what it is, whether it's a skimmer. Let's have a look. A beautiful fish. 4 fish, 4 species. What a beautiful fish. That's a beautiful fish even in summer, never mind on a freezing cold day like this when there's ice on the lake. Still got a bit of energy left in him. He's taking the bait properly as well. That's a really, it looked like a bream bite. Beautiful fish that is on any day, never mind a day like today. Well, how about that? A quick knock and then a drop back. What we got this time? Oh, he's come off. Looked like a little hide, that one. Yeah, quick pull and then a drop back. Well, that was a really positive pull, that one. Let's see what this one is. Thought I'd missed that one, to be honest. It was that quick and out of the blue. Might be an hide, this one. Let's have a look. Another hide. Slight tinge of colour on his back. Almost rudd colour at the top of him. Good fish though. See how he build the weight of those up. Got loads of energy left in him. Well, I've got to openly admit that that was the hardest session of the winter so far, but considering that the lake was frozen and there's so much extra water that's gone through this lake, I think it's been brilliant that we've been able to get a few bites and we've caught some lovely fish. Obviously loose feeding was the best way to go today. They didn't catch any fish over that ground bait feeder approach, but that's why we cover our options. And as always in fishing, we're always learning. It's really been worth coming out today, and it just shows that fisheries like this that are really well stocked, you can still have a great day's fishing even in the depths of winter when it's, you know, when the temperatures are below zero. I hope you've enjoyed sharing this session with me. If you have, then please give the video a thumbs up and don't forget to hit subscribe if you want to see more videos. So thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time.